I want to welcome everybody to the Lossan Rail Corridor Agency Board meeting of July 31st. We have a number of people on the phone as well, so why don't we go ahead and start out with a roll call.
Chairman Golonsky,
Here.
Vice Chairman Krantz,
Here.
Director Strong,
Here.
Director Carbajal, Director McDonald,
Here.
Director DuBois,
Here.
Director Height, Director Murray,
Present, ma'am.
Director Hennessy, Director Pettis,
Here.
Director Gastel,
Here.
Director Hebner, Director Morrison, Director Kalfin,
Present.
Director Roberts, Director Beam, and Director Brown.
Okay, so we're going to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm sorry, Chairman, just a moment.
She's supposed to teleconference?
The Lakewood location, she just told me. Director Boehm, are you on the line?
I don't hear.
No, Du Bois is at the Lakewood location. Can you hear me?
We can, Director Du Bois. Thank you very much. I understood that Director Boehm was going to be joining you at that location.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
Okay, so we'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, and please stand. It's going to be led today by Director Pettis.
Please join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. That'll bring us to our first period of public comments. Anyone wishing to address the board, please fill out a little card and give it to our clerk. And our first speaker would be Paul Dyson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. Paul Dyson, President of the Rail Passengers Association of California. Just a very brief comment on the opening of this meeting. I was at the San Joaquin meeting last weekend and said pretty much the same thing. Our biggest concern as an organization is the retention of the statewide rail network. What we're concerned about is that this organization could become distracted in which we think a misconceived idea of creating its own brand rather than sticking with the Amtrak California brand, which is recognized by well over 70% of the population. Balkanization will be disastrous, we think, for those that wish to make through journeys around the state. We must maintain the state network. Secondly, we strongly support any efforts to extend the service to meet the Capital Corridor at Salinas one way or another, in other words, to introduce the Coast Daylight. And we heard this morning at the Coast Rail Coordinating Council meeting of an idea from Amtrak to run a very early morning train from San Diego and then meet the schedule of the 761 at Los Angeles, and we fully support that general idea. This organization is in the business of running an intercity rail service, not a commuter service. It's in the business of intercity passenger transportation to carry people long distances for higher fares. We have corridor agencies, and it's their job to take care of their own passengers. While there can be some interaction between the two, the primary focus is to move people longer distances between counties to get them out of their cars on their journeys between 2 or 3 counties, not just to turn the whole service into a city bus line. Finally, do your best to make this service greener. While we are supposed to be getting delivery of some new locomotives, which will have lower emissions, this will not completely replace the fleet. And I hope you folks will take a look at some opportunities, for example, to look at new hybrid technologies and the rebuilding of the existing fleet with new technology which cleans them up. It's a bit hard to go out and sell ourselves as an environmentally friendly form of transportation with the old fleet of locomotives that we have. So I hope you'll be able to pay some attention to that in due course. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And our next speaker would be Mayor Schneider from Santa Barbara. welcome.
Well, I was going to welcome you. Good morning to the Lossan board, and welcome to Santa Barbara. And I hope you had a great train ride up if you came up this morning or last night, and get to spend some time in Santa Barbara. It's a beautiful time. It's always a beautiful time of year in Santa Barbara. But it's great to have this meeting here today. And I really also want to commend and congratulate this board and the staff, as we're at a milestone period of time right now when we finally have local control over the Lossan corridor, and the many years that we've all worked together on SB 1225 and getting that through the process and implemented, getting the managing director put together and hired, and working really well. And it's just great to see this long regional cooperation on something as important as passenger rail throughout the corridor. Earlier this morning, many of you were at the Coastal Rail Coordinating Council meeting that was just mentioned, and to be able to coordinate with all the different corridor agencies throughout the state, I really see that we're creating more momentum and progress, especially up in Sacramento when it comes to funding opportunities, and really working the last couple of years like we have on the guiding principles and statement of purpose. When we all work together and sing the same tune, they hear it a lot louder and clearer up in Sacramento, when it especially comes to budget times. So it's been an honor to serve as an alternate member through the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments on this project. It's something I know we all care about. And really just today I wanted to welcome you to Santa Barbara. Hope you get to spend some time here after your meeting, and really want to congratulate our milestones here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, any members of the public that would like to address the Lossan board? Any at any of the teleconference sites?
No, this is Diane, if I can. Director Beam is here as well.
Thank you, Diane. Okay. So
Welcome.
that concludes public comment. Does anyone wish to address any of those comments? Director Roberts?
Two items, just to remind and just to point out. Part of the documents we do have, and I would encourage the public and encourage also, as we know, all board members will look at, is our ITA. And our ITA talks about elements of our working groups with, and so elements we hear about integration and coordination and intercity effectiveness moving forward. Our ITA, we try to be very structured to make sure that aspect is continuous, and there's a commitment, and there's an item today talks about membership that will be taken up later. But there's an ongoing commitment for integration and continuation of effective passenger service now and in the future, and we're all committed to it at many levels. Secondly, about greener fleet. Now, if we could just perhaps talk, the state is looking at and is committed to, or the governor is committed to, a sustainable freight plan, and that sustainable freight plan will look at many elements that make a very green fleet. And so that's more for the director's report, but again, we look at the governor's executive order on sustainable freight strategy and efforts that will improve rail service, that those have benefits that would be both for passenger and freight, for improvements of the movement across the state. So just two items, just a reference for everything.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? No, I would just...
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Al Murray. I don't know if my other colleagues in teleconferencing are experiencing the same thing, but we're getting kind of a dropout in part of the conversation, so I'm not sure if it's the microphones or the teleconferencing, but if you could ask our colleagues to be close to the mic, that would be appreciated.
Thank you. I'm seeing the same thing.
Okay, we'll try to heed that, and just FYI, we are the guinea pigs today on a new televised system here in Santa Barbara, so we're hoping that getting closer to the mic helps. Did that help?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and just briefly, I would say one of the things to Mr. Dyson is that, as we look at our goals and our updating of our strategic plan, I think innovation across sort of all aspects of everything we do, not just greener, but innovation in the way we communicate with our passengers, the way we handle fare is a topic that we need to make sure we're all on top of, and we can talk about that as we look at our goals in our strategic plan on how we make sure that we are looking at innovative ways in every, piece of our operation. Okay, so with that, we have no special calendar matters. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar today consists of items 2 and 3. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the board meeting of June 15th, and item 3 is authorization to serve on local, state, and federal committees.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, so
Second?
we have a motion by Director Strong and a second by Director Carbajal on the consent calendar, items 2 and 3. I believe we have to do a roll call because we have folks on the teleconference.
Yes,
So if we could have a roll call, please.
Chairman Galonsky,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Krantz,
Yes.
Director Strong,
Yes.
Director Carbajal,
Yes.
Director McDonald,
Yes.
Director Du Bois,
Yes.
Director Murray,
Yes.
Director Pettis, Director Gastel,
Yes.
and Director Morrison.
Okay. So that passes, and we move on to item number 4, which is the state legislative status report. Ms. Bergner.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Lance Larson, who is, can those on the phone hear me? Is this okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Lance Larson, who is the Executive Director of our Government Affairs, will be presenting on this item. This is an update on a couple of bills that are pending and seeking position from the board on, on SB 9. So with that, Lance?
On or not? Okay, thank you, Lance Larson. Thank you for the introduction. Your staff report outlines the governor's budget, the special session that he called, and I'll get to the SB 9 position that we're looking for board approval on. But real quickly, the governor did sign a $115.4 billion state budget. For our purposes, it includes $127.1 million to support intercity rail operations, $2 billion of cap and trade funding, with 60% being allocated based on formula. Of that, $200 million for the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, $500 million for high-speed rail, $400 million for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, and then, of course, the legislature retained 40% of those funds that are still unallocated, subject to further negotiations. Since the staff report was written, approved, and signed, I have a couple of reports just to tell the board what has happened since then. Other bills have been introduced related to transit funding, including ABX 17, this is a Nazarian bill, and SBX 18, which is a Hill bill, which doubles the allocation of cap and trade funding for the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program and the Transit Intercity Rail Program to 10% for the what we call the LCTOP and 20% for the Transit Intercity Rail Program, respectively. ABX 18 and SBX 17, this is Chu and Allen, increases the diesel sales tax with funds to be allocated for transit operations per the state transit assistance formula. Right now, it's still unclear if transit will be a part of the package, or if there's any adequate votes from moderate Democrats, Republicans to get any funding package passed at this point. Staff will continue to work through the platform to participate in these discussions, and in coordination with the other Indy-City Rail agencies, Lossan member agencies, and the California Transit Association. Our work with the Transit Association has been received very well, and they are the kind of our bigger macro overarching association that's been in the building with us side by side that we have worked with. And I'd like to highlight them because they've been working very hard on this cap and trade program. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, SB 9, this is the Beal Bill, Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program. We are looking for a support position from the board. Just a little overview. SB 9 seeks to revise the cap and trade Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, or TIRCP program, which currently receives 10% of total revenues on an ongoing basis. SB 9 would make more significant improvements to the TIRCP program to make more projects to be competitive including Lossan sponsors and Lossan member agency sponsored projects. SB 9 was amended significantly over the last month to address concerns of the opposition, including removing any project cost thresholds on eligible projects. And, Mr. Chairman, I know that was one of our points that we had communicated to the legislature a couple months ago on ways to improve bills such as SB 9. Agencies in support of SB 9, including CTA, SDMTS, Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, Antelope Valley Transit Authority, and with the recent amendments, most opposition has been removed. Staff does recommend a support position consistent with the Lossan legislative program.
Thank you. Director Strong?
Yes, quick question. Is SB 9 the one that has now been retitled as SBX11?
SBX11 is the Alejo bill, which retains vehicle weight fees in the state highway account, rather than be used for debt service on transportation obligation bonds. So I would
I
say
think that's
no.
ABS.
I'm sorry, SBX1?
SB.
Yes, that is the identical bill to, no, I'm sorry, that's the SB16 bill. Same author, different bill.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone on the phone have any questions about our...
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair, but I'd like to make a motion and a couple of comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Based upon reading the information, it's clear that SB 9 will modify the transit and intercity rail capital program to focus on what I think is really important, which is multi-year rail capital and transit system improvements. So I think it's a big step in the right direction, and I would like to move that we support position on SB 9.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Director Murray and a second by Director Carbajal. Is there any further discussion or questions? Director Carbajal?
Thank you, Chairman Golonsky. First of all, this is a little bit of a digression from the motion, but I'm going to take the opportunity to just add some comments on this general subject. First of all, I think the motion is great, and but I'm hoping that in a future either executive meeting or future agenda, we could put whether we need to consider having our own legislative advocate for the surf liner in Sacramento. And I think it's important for us to have that conversation. So as I second this motion, I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's important to give that consideration.
Okay, and I would just tell you that is on our agenda for the executive committee because of the restrictions on funding legislative efforts. So we have to have that conversation, and we'll include that as well. Anyone else? Anyone else on the phone have any comments or questions? I have a question, Mr. Larson. So I was concerned with SB 9 because I thought it previously had some sort of arbitrary limits and just assumed that larger projects were better. But I was always supportive of being able to also fund the larger transformative projects, but not necessarily at the expense of potentially good projects that the only thing that would disqualify them might be that they don't spend enough money. So I think that the changes are good. Would it be correct to say that SB 9 is really about a change in the approach for this program, if you will, from project-based funding to more programmatic funding with its multi-year and the implications for agencies like us then I think would be it'd be incumbent upon us to put together more programmatic funding requests as opposed to single project?
I will say, let me just back you up, and when we first we started our legislative advocacy efforts in Sacramento, you and Director Strong were very, very active in Sacramento when we looked at a program which was very new, very fluid, and I think Senator Beal should be commended for his willingness to work with agencies such as ours and others to really kind of change the program as the stakeholders have suggested. Case in point, SB 9 was introduced, and the amendments that were taken and approved dropped a lot of the opposition and addressed things such as larger projects, multi-year funding. It really actually even clarified that if you are an agency and you have a couple of projects, that you're not limited to just one project. So I would say yes, that was a very, very forward-thinking and a progressive way of addressing some of our intercity rail programs within the cap and trade program.
Okay. But the implication for us is that as an agency, we're going to have to maybe work a little harder to make sure that we foster the coordination to put together what might have been previously thought of as multiple projects into sort of a more comprehensive programmatic approach.
I'd refer that to the executive director.
Okay, Ms. Bergner?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I would say that is absolutely a true statement. Prior conversations and updates to both the executive committee, the board, and TAC have indicated that our staff-level conversations with agency and with the Division of Rail have indicated that we will be far more successful in achieving and receiving grant funds if we do a program of projects rather than incremental small-type projects, such as a smaller double-tracking project. Instead, if we looked more holistically at, let's say, a double-tracking project in San Diego and another in Santa Barbara, couple that with maybe some signal-type improvements, maybe some other operational efficiencies, and show benefit along the entire corridor, we will compete far better than isolated and insulated projects. We've also been encouraged as an agency to submit applications jointly with our members rather than standalone applications.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anyone on the phone? No, then can we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Galonsky?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Krantz?
Yes.
Director Strong?
Yes.
Director Carbajal?
Aye.
Director McDonald?
Yes.
Director DuBois?
Yes.
Director Murray?
Yes?
Director Pettis?
Yes.
Director Gastil?
Yes.
And Director Morrison?
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. And that moves us on to item number 5, which is the cooperative agreement for continuance of the rail-to-rail program. Ms. Bergner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is for, as the Chairman just said, a continuance of the rail-to-rail program. It's a program that is in place currently with 2 agencies along the corridor, North County Transit District, or NCTD, as well as Metrolink. This specific item deals with the rail-to-rail program between the Surfliner and NCTD's coaster service. Again, it's a continuance of a program that has been in place since 2013. As outlined in the staff report, the continuance of this program is consistent with the board adopted and state approved annual business plan to increase mobility and transportation options along the corridor. I would also call to the board's attention that this program provides mutual benefit for both agencies, as is also called out in the staff report. First, it provides benefit to NCTD and Coaster by providing additional service at a small increment of the cost that it would be to put that service out there on their own. That said, it also improves congestion along the corridor by them not trying to introduce more trains in an already congested corridor, but rather relying on the services that are there while improvements are being made. It provides significant benefit to the Lossan agency and the Pacific Surfliner by helping us to achieve some of our required performance standards that are included in the interagency transfer agreement. So those are passenger miles, increases in ridership, and fare box recovery. While the revenue received for the transfer of these passengers is a small increment of what a ticket fare, a full fare would be, these seats are otherwise unoccupied 99% of the time. And the reimbursement rate is based on an average fare per boarding on the coaster system. And we believe it's an equitable reimbursement for the utilization of those seats on the Surfliner service. The agreement is completely consensus-based and is fully supported by the 4 parties involved. That would be at the staff level here with the Surfliner, with the Lossan agency, Amtrak, the state, and NCTD has actually already executed this agreement. We have received their signed document. With that overview of the program, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the continuance of the program.
Okay, we also have a request for public comment on this issue, so why don't we go to that? Mr. Dyson?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much. Paul Dyson with RailPAC. This, you will note, of course, that today is the 31st of July, and this agreement expires on the 31st of July. So basically, you're being presented with a fait accompli. There's really, unless you choose to embarrass yourselves and the providers of this service by cancelling the program, there really is no way you can do it. The timetables have been published. The passengers are using the service. Quite why this only just got to the agenda today, I'm really not sure. But just like you to consider these notions, these facts. First of all, any agreement of this kind should be in parallel with the change of the timetable. So if you do choose to renew this agreement today, I would strongly recommend that you do so for a period of, say, 9 months, so that when the new timetable is issued in April, you have the opportunity before then to review the program to decide whether all 4 stops are necessary or all of the trains are necessary. And then you can, when the new timetable is published, you can make whatever changes are necessary. Secondly, though, this speaks to the, as I said in my opening comments, this speaks to the business that you're in. Whether you're in the intercity business or whether you want to downgrade the service by adding stops to put yourselves in the commuter rail business. Now, while I can understand that there's always this desire to fill up empty seats and to help out another agency, and while the staff made an excellent point about capacity on the line, nevertheless, when you downgrade the service and add stops, when you reduce the punctuality, which is already extremely fragile, you drive away the higher paying, longer distance passengers. And so again, I would ask you, before you renew this next time, you conduct a thorough study on just what drives people to pay a high price for a ticket on this corridor, and what are the negatives that they perceive. As an example, a single one-way fare from Los Angeles to San Diego is $37. That's about 8 times the fare that you're getting from one of these short-haul passengers from NCTD. Put it another way, you only have to sell about 1.5 more tickets on each of your daily 24 trains on the corridor to make up the same amount of revenue as you do by collecting from this NCTD program. It just doesn't pass the sniff test with me to be told that there's minimal impact on cost and minimal impact on punctuality. When you've got, as I say, a fragile corridor like this and with a lousy punctuality record, to add 4 stops onto a number of trains, even if you've got enough recovery time on those trains, the chances are that when you've got late running, you're not going to make up any of that time. I see my time is up, but I really ask you to think about this, that this should not be renewed for a full year, but you have a chance to fully review this and just renew it until the next timetable. Thanks.
Thank you. I think Ms. Bergner wants to
Mr. Chairman, if I
respond.
might offer just a couple of response comments, though I certainly don't want to go back and forth with Mr. Dyson. We have offered to sit down with him and talk in detail about this program, and I also understand that Mr. Roberts' office, as well as Mr. Fountain with Amtrak, has met with Mr. Dyson on this individually. What I will say is the agreement presented before you comes only 30 days after the signing of the ITA, and this would be the first opportunity that this board had in its new capacity to take action on this agreement. Prior to the execution of the ITA, we would not have been party to this agreement, therefore we could not have brought it forward to you. The state has been working in earnest to renew the agreement, and there were some questions that necessitated a little bit longer of a review time, and that is why the agreement is before you today, just to set the record clear on that. With response to Mr. Dyson's questions or statements about reviewing the agreement, I would call your attention to Section 4, Provision 3, that certainly says that we will review the agreement twice yearly during February and August, and this is the beginning prep time for each of our schedule changes. So as we move forward with those schedule changes, the agreement will certainly be reviewed. There are also provisions in here for adjusting fares and other items. So I believe that we are very, very clear and able to adjust the agreement as necessary. I think that really is all I feel to offer in response to Mr. Dyson, but be happy to answer any of the board's questions with respect to the agreement itself.
Okay, Director
Through
Pettis.
the chair?
Yeah, let's go Director Pettis, and then we'll go to the phone.
Just as a general question to the executive director. If all of the agencies view this as a good thing, is there a reason not to have a master agreement that would last 3 years and still allow staff to do changes as they see fit from just a managerial standpoint?
You're breaking
Yes.
up.
Director Dubois, Director Pettis was asking, is there a reason that we couldn't execute a longer-term agreement? And I think that's actually a great question, and one I talked about with the vice chairman preceding the meeting. The reason that we can't do a 3-year agreement, for example, is we can only enter into agreements that are consistent with the length of the ITA, which is a 3-year period. We can't enter into an agreement that extends beyond that period. We could certainly do a 2-year agreement if the board so chose. However, in discussing this with both the agency's legal counsel as well as the Division of Rail's legal counsel, we felt it was prudent to do a 1-year agreement, given that the current operating agreement extends into a period of this, that is until September. And then on October 1st, the new operating agreement will be inclusive of Lossan Rail Corridor Agency and Amtrak. So there's an operational agreement provision that we wanted to make sure we were able to capture, and we could do a longer-term agreement on the renewal.
Okay. And was that Director Murray on the phone?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. What's our next steps following the continuance of the cooperative agreement through July 2016, Jennifer?
I'm sorry?
What are the next steps following the continuance of the cooperative agreement through July 2016?
We need to circulate for signature, and other than that, the program will continue in exactly the form that is in, with the exception of the provisions that were included or highlighted in the staff report. So,
Okay. Is it possible that we might be able to do a survey of the passengers using the program to kind of give us some more detailed information as we move forward?
We certainly could. We have built into this agreement and into our business plan onboard surveys, and we can certainly do that. If there was specific information that you were hoping to obtain through those surveys, we'll work through the committees and the board to understand what those specific questions are.
Okay. And then also, as we move forward, Jennifer, if we have a low-performing station or some considerations that come back, giving us some of the data that the gentleman spoke to, that we might look at, 10 months down the line, would that be helpful as we maybe make some suggestions and changes?
I would think it certainly would. We currently report out on rail-to-rail ridership, and we will continue to do so as we move forward with each of those reports. So we can certainly share that information. We do break it down by station now, so we'll continue to report out and refine that information.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Director Strong?
Yes. Our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th, is it not?
Yes, sir.
In our February discussion, would it be possible then for us to possibly adjust this closing time, ending time of this to the June 30th date so that this agreement would run consistent with our fiscal year in the future?
Director Strong, we would take direction from the board on adjusting any of these agreements. I'm not sure what would be secured by doing that.
I'm asking if it would be a motion in order at that time.
I am comfortable at this point with the term of this agreement as it is set. What I would recommend to the board is that upon renewal of this agreement, we will have been several months into the new operating agreement, and maybe we revisit it at that time to be consistent with the balance of what is left of the ITA term at that point.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else, any questions or comments? No, just a couple things that I did want to point out, that there is a clause in this agreement that allows for termination with 60-day notice. I think that's a clause that nobody wants to see invoked, but if there were some circumstances that arose that we weren't able to agree to adjustments or some such, there is an out for both parties, frankly. And, a quick look ahead at the next item, which is our 100-day action plan, item number 7, is negotiate the continuance of the rail-to-rail programs for Metrolink and Coaster. And I believe that item is actually a more holistic look at the overall rail-to-rail program. and will allow us the opportunity to bring some of the data into play and some more information. This is essentially a one-year continuance, basically word for word verbatim of our previous agreement to continue it on. It's been a successful program, and we want to continue it. But I think we are cognizant of the fact that, you know, we're going to be looking at some studies on scheduling of trains. There's a lot of things that can influence these, and we also need to make sure that how we treat, you know, rail to rail in somewhat consistent manner with the various partners, Metrolink and Coaster, and that. And there's some big challenges in that ahead that we need to work. But I think the one-year extension makes sense. I will say to Director Strong's point that one of the items that I've talked with Ms. Bergner on a couple times, and we need to have some discussions on, is to figure out what sort of is our schedule, because right at the moment we're in a transition. While we have a fiscal schedule, it doesn't necessarily coincide with our funding schedule, which is now provided by the state, which doesn't coincide with our operating agreement with Amtrak, which doesn't necessarily coincide with the federal schedule. So at some point in time, what we have to do is kind of overlay all of those things together and figure out what makes the most sense from us from a fiscal standpoint, from an operating standpoint, how we reconcile those various schedules that we're currently operating on. But that's an item that as we talk about our goals and we look at our strategic planning, you know, we'll take that into consideration. You know, it's a weekly process that a new schedule arises that also has some implications for funding and grant deadlines and things like that. So I think we have to
Mr. Chair?
reconcile that. Director Du Bois.
Yes, I couldn't sit quietly, even though I'm not at the building. It seems to me very, very concisely, if you will, that we need to get all of our ducks in a row for a better, and get the contracts in place that we have, and then if you want to start making changes, do that. But let's not make a change a month after we have the ITA when we're trying to get everything together. Let's get it all together and then do the analyses and the things that may make us a better service, but at the same time have the relationships that we need.
Okay.
Does that make sense to anybody? I'm saying let's go ahead and approve the item.
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to make that motion.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Director Strong, a second by Director Carbajal to adopt the staff recommendation to authorize the managing director to negotiate and execute a cooperative agreement between Lossan and the California Department of Transportation, NCTD, and Amtrak to continue the rail-to-rail program for a term of 1 year. Okay? All right. Any further discussion? No? Then we'll do a roll call, please.
Chairman Galonsky,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Krantz,
Yes.
Director Strong,
Yes.
Director Carbajal,
Yes.
Director McDonald,
Yes.
Director Du Bois,
Yes?
Director Murray,
Yes, ma'am.
Director Pettis, Director Gastil, and Director Morrison.
Okay, that passes unanimously. And that moves us on to item number 6, which is the Lossan Post-Interagency Transfer Agreement 100-Day Action Plan. Ms. Bergner?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. We have there we go. Great. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, and for the folks on the phone, I'll just bring your attention to, in the agenda packet, there's a PowerPoint presentation that goes along with Ms. Bergner's discussion here today.
Again, thank you. Members of the board, we felt that it was important to outline with the board, the TAC, and our stakeholders a 100-day action plan. You may recall that when OCTA took over as the managing agency, we did the very same thing. We wanted to make sure that everyone was informed of the efforts that we would be undertaking in the first 100 days and the significant level of effort that would be exerted to assume responsibility of this service. We did vet this item through the TAC. We did receive some feedback from the TAC members and have incorporated it into the work plan itself. No changes were made to the PowerPoint, but we do have additional feedback from them on each of these tasks. Megan, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. Folks on the phone, we're on slide 2. So the first item under the transition plan is, the first item under the 100-day action plan is the implementation and carry out of the transition plan. We had provided the state with an example of the type of transition plan that we would like to work from with them. They are in the process of finalizing that now. There's been some changes in staffing at the state that has necessitated a little bit longer time in completing this transition plan. But I will say, while we do not have the written document in place, we are certainly underway with transitioning tasks over really on a daily basis. One example of that was the assumption of responsibility for the monthly operations meeting. Staff did take over, if you will, that meeting this month, set the agenda, and that's but one small example of the type of things that we're doing and transitioning over. We're receiving copies of the Amtrak invoices now so that we can understand exactly what level of details included in those invoices, what's required to review them, what the state has historically done to review them, so on and so forth. We will continue with that transition over the next couple of months and keep the board apprised as we make progress through that effort. One of the key actions that I think that we're undertaking, and Michael and I am sure both very much looking forward to, is the hiring of staff. There are a couple of positions actually already posted, consistent with the discussion that we had with both the executive committee and the board. We will delay the hiring of the lower level marketing position in the short term to provide the opportunity for the marketing manager to help with that hiring and to make sure that we've not overstaffed as we're assuming those responsibilities. If you want to look at any of the job postings that are up, they are on the Lossan website through the OCTA website. So I can certainly provide those to the board if you're interested, but they are filled, and I am also happy to report that we're receiving interest in another number of those positions. Interviews should start next week. So the third item is to negotiate and execute the Amtrak operating agreement. The next agenda item provides for a more comprehensive overview of where we are with that. With the pleasure of the board, I would like to just defer that one until the next item. The fourth item is to begin the implementation of the transit transfer pass. As you may recall, on our very second day of existence as our new agency, we were notified that we were awarded our first grant, our competitive cap and trade grant application. Much credit is to be given to Deputy Director Michael Litchie for largely crafting that entire agreement. He is also underway with developing the necessary agreements with each of the participants to implement that program. And in speaking with Mr. Roberts before the meeting, the state is also working on what each of the individual agreements will look like with the agencies to facilitate the transfer of funds for those agreements. We will keep the board apprised as to our progress on that front, and our member agencies are certainly helping us coordinate with each of the transit providers along the corridor, so I would like to extend thanks to the member agencies and their staff as well. We are beginning to develop and implement our own marketing program. This will take some period of time. The state does have some existing budget now that they are going to, and an existing contract now, and they're continuing on with some of the Twitter feeds, for example, and the Facebook and things of this nature. But I will say that we have been looped into those discussions. We approve what goes out via Twitter or Facebook or any of the promotions. It's been a really good partnership with the state, and they have very actively engaged us over the last 2 weeks. We are also working with our partners at the San Joaquin and the Capital Corridor to find out where there might be some opportunities for joint marketing efforts and synergies to be had there, so we're not recreating the wheel if unnecessary. Item 6, Megan, if you could flip to 6. No, thanks. We're reaching out to key stakeholders along the corridor, and to that end, we're working on letters to our legislators along the corridor to remind them of who we are and what has just occurred over the last month. Last week, Deputy Director Michael Litchie, along with staff from the Division Rail and Mass Transit and member agencies along the corridor, did a 3-day tour of the corridor, visiting every single station along the corridor to assess the current condition of the station, to view the progress of any minor capital projects, help compile a list. So we have actively engaged members and cities along the corridor in that way, and we'll continue to do so over the coming months. With respect to item 7, we certainly just discussed the continuance of the program with NCTD. In the coming months, we will be working with Metrolink to continue that program as well. The board might recall that that particular program has actually expired, but we are working under just a gentleman's handshake, if you will, to continue that program for the time being. So it's an urgent item for us to bring that back to this board and have a new rail-to-rail agreement in place with them prior to the execution of our operating agreement with Amtrak. Right now, that program continues under the direction of the state and Metrolink directly. So we will be working on that with them. I have asked for a meeting with Mr. Leahy, and I believe actually that meeting is set for next week to discuss that and a number of other possible opportunities between the agencies. Meg? Item 8 is to represent Lossan Agency in the Section 209 Working Group, tried to provide updates through the weekly to the board members and to TAC as with respect to our role in the larger discussions, the implementation of the 209 provisions. We do sit on 2 of the subcommittees. I think we are very well represented there, and as noted in the weekly, either last week or the week before, David Katrowski, who's the managing director of the Capital Corridor, is actually the chairman of the larger committee. So I think we have great representation on that committee. Item number 9 is continuing to advocate for the Lossan Corridor, continued revenues or continued funding, both capital and operating in a long-term sustainable source. We continue to be actively engaged with the IPR group, the California Intercity Passenger Rail Coalition, and there was a joint letter sent out, included in the weekly last week again, seeking additional revenues. I think in Lance's report earlier in the agenda, we certainly talked about some of our efforts on that front as well. We will continue to do that and update the board as we move forward. The final item under this is to review our key initiatives and goals. This is an item that I know is very important to the chairman. We'll be talking with the executive committee next week about what we envision with respect to updating of the strategic plan, with respect to the establishment of additional committees, board committees, and what that composition of those committees and scope will look like. There was an initial proposal put forward in the managing agency's proposal, and we've talked about it a little bit over time, but I want to make sure that we have a good and open dialogue with the board about what those committees are, what their purview is, and who will participate in those committees moving forward. This is by no means a comprehensive list of the things that we are doing in the first 100 days, but intended to, of course, highlight for you some of the major topics. On a day-to-day basis, we continue to manage the agency, create the agendas, seek board approval and input through both the board, the TAC, and the working group. So there are a number of other activities, of course, that are ongoing that are not captured here in these slides. With that, I'd be happy to answer any board questions.
Director Strong?
Yes, very quickly. Item number 7, if you're creating a master contract, could we not include some of the other agencies such as SLORTA, San Luis Obispo Regional Transit Authority, to be a participant in that program at that end of the corridor?
Oh, Director Strong, I'm sorry. Let me just back up and be clear. Item number 7 is just the continuance of the rail-to-rail program. That program is in place with only 2 agencies along the corridor, and we are working on that one. With respect to item, the Transit Transfer Pass program, which is, I think, the one that you were referring to.
That's what I mean.
Item 5. We have to have individual agreements with each of the agencies, as there's a reimbursement that's specific to the agency, and each agency has its own provision. Unfortunately, we're not possible to have a master agreement for that. We do have a master agreement, though, with the state, which was included in our interagency transfer agreement, specifically was Appendix D, the Master Fund Transfer Agreement, the MFTA, and that will be the vehicle for Lossan to receive those grant funds. And then we will make disbursements to the participating agencies
Okay,
along
and
the
that may
corridor.
be beyond the 100 days then.
Possibly.
Okay, thank you.
Director Carbajal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, in light of the fact that in Santa Barbara County, we're working aggressively to bring about the retiming of the Surfliner, I'm just wondering where that fits in this 100-day action plan. Keep in mind that the expectation has been set by Caltrans and with multiple stakeholders that we would achieve this by spring 2016. So if we're going to really meet that, at some point we need to have a schematic of next steps, but certainly within 100 days, I don't know that we can just kind of review this within 100 days. I think we need to really put in concrete steps that we're taking to continue to move that effort forward. I know Senator Jackson has been really engaging the state, but it would be a real shame if we don't aggressively start developing steps and concrete timelines and milestones to hit so that we can make that a reality. So I don't know if you have a response to that, Ms. Bregner, but I certainly think it's important that we call it out, or that unless you have it included in one of these 10 initiatives here.
Director Carbajal, it would be included, I think, under item number 10. And I had planned to give an update on the retiming effort as part of the managing director's update, but I'm happy to do that now at the pleasure of the chairman. I will take your direction on that.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and give us an update now? That's fine.
Okay. Over the past many months, we have been working very diligently on moving the ITA forward with the state, and the state has also been working very diligently on cap-and-trade applications. And I don't want to suggest that this effort has not moved forward in any fashion, but it has slowed down a little bit since the last update that you all received. That said, the effort is consistent with a letter that was sent from the Deputy Secretary Chad Edison to Hannah Beth Jackson's office, indicating that we would have a more robust update with respect to the retiming in the July or August timeframe. Now that the ITA has been negotiated and is underway, I am working in earnest with Chad to move that effort forward. Have had a couple of conversations with Mr. Kemp and with Scott Spalding and others along the corridor about what the next steps there look like, and specifically what needs to occur over the next couple of weeks and is already being put in place is a meeting with the Union Pacific about the potential for utilizing some layover tracks and other things that would enable the operations of that service. The Deputy Secretary had a meeting with the UP 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, he's been on vacation, or fortunately for him, he's been on vacation for the last 2 weeks and out of pocket, so I've not been able to communicate with him about the success of that meeting. But I did talk independently with the Union Pacific. They, right before this meeting, they are very well aware that this is a priority for us. They are more than willing to come to the table and talk about those things. We are looking to set up another site-specific meeting within the next 30-day time frame. In parallel with that, the contractor that is, the vendor that is under contract to the state right now doing the ridership modeling has received or will receive this week, or I'm sorry, next week, specific direction with respect to modeling, because one of the things that hasn't been done yet is a detailed level modeling analysis that takes into account the implementation of PTC, that takes into account not just the Surfliner trains, but the other trains along this corridor that includes the Metrolink trains. On the longer term, that includes the coaster trains and also includes the freight trains. The modeling exercise that was done and was previously presented to the SBCAG board did not take into account all of those factors, and that needs to be done. It was a retiming of Surfliner trains to see if they could meet the peak period demand that was being sought. I have committed to Mr. Kemp, and I will commit to this board to continue, with the board's blessing, of course, to continue to work on this in earnest, with the understanding that there is an expectation of spring of 2016. And I have also committed to Mr. Kemp to provide a detailed timeline of what we believe the steps are that need to occur that I just outlined for you as soon as I have the opportunity to talk with Mr. Edison.
Okay. Director McDonald?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just want to go on record as supporting Director Carvajal's comments. Santa Barbara and Ventura County on a variety of levels have been having a lot of discussions about improving transportation to and from both areas to the other areas. And so I think it's important that, and I recognize that most of this is out of our direct control, but I think it's important that all of us make comments to the appropriate persons that this is truly important to us, that it needs not to be lost in the smallness of things. So I would encourage us to wholeheartedly move forward in that area.
Director Strong?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move approval of the 100-day action plan.
I would second that, but I have a couple of comments here. Can you, Jennifer, can you explain, as relates to items 1 and 2, how things are going with the human resources in terms of jobs that are being handled by the state now in the transition? And do you expect that transition to be able to be completed within 100 days?
Vice Chairman Krantz, the hiring of additional staff is taking a little longer than I would have hoped, but we wanted to make sure that we were very clear in our job descriptions, and there is a process that we follow. OCTA, as the managing agency, has policies and practices in place, and we're following those to make sure that we don't get in trouble with any labor laws or anything of that nature. So while it has taken a little bit longer than I would have liked, I am pleased with the progress. We have several, all but 3 of the positions posted. And as I said, we have interviews beginning next week. I believe that the transfer of duties from the state to the Lossan agency will take place over the next 100 days and will in large part conclude, it would be my goal to have those concluded with the execution of the new operating agreement. It seems to me that that is a logical place where those duties would transfer. There may be some carryover items that need to continue on, but those would be small, and we would keep the board apprised as to what those are. But with the execution of the new operating agreement, that would seem to me to be a good place that we would transition. However, the state has graciously offered, and I would expect that they will continue to be obviously a very active partner in these discussions, and they have offered to make sure that they continue to walk with us lock and step as we move into really owning and assuming our own contract and what that would look like over time. That said, there are still duties as outlined in the ITA that would be retained by the state and those that would be assumed by Lossan, and we will be working in concert on a number of those fronts over the 3-year period.
Okay. Director Roberts, did you want to say something?
And I would also, to echo what Jennifer said, we are developing a relationship that then moves, not only, it's not just handing the keys and saying, here you go, you now have the key that opens and closes the doors on all your Surfliner cars. It's a partnership that then moves forward, and so we are developing this partnership, and it's very much a lockstep and hand in hand moving forward. So as we develop how that relationship works, how we effectively then move money and support to the Lossan agency, and then also how that we provide support and reconciliation back and forth is a developing process, which we'll be happy to give you updates, but it is going very cooperatively, and the 100-day plan is a good target, and we are committed to that, to work toward that point of the transition with the execution of the operating agreement, but there will be an ongoing relationship which is here forever.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second, but the item's not really agendized as an action item. It's a discussion item. So I don't think we're not in a position where we can actually approve it. It's really a note and file, if anything. It doesn't really require any action. But.
Yes, Chairman Galonsky, it is just a receive and file.
Okay. But I think that staff has got the feedback, and I've spoken with Ms. Bergner, too, about the committees and that, and I know that we're working, and that there's a lot of plates spinning. I think a lot of us looked at July 1st as the finalization of the ITA, and it was, but that's not the finalization of the transition work that is required to be done, and there's a significant amount of that still. So with that, any further comments or questions on the 100-day plan? No? With that, we'll move on then to item number 7, which is an overview of the federal fiscal year 2015-2016 Amtrak operating agreement. Ms. Bergner?
Oh, sorry. I was out of sync. My apologies. Directors, I would like to provide you just a verbal update on where we are. I have shared this with both the chairman and the vice chairman. We are in the throes of negotiating the agreement, if you will, with Amtrak, and we had what I consider to be a very productive meeting with Amtrak, the San Joaquins, and the Capital Corridor 2 weeks ago in taking a comprehensive look at the estimates that were provided. So annually, Amtrak will send a letter, in this instance it went to the state, and say, these are our base assumptions for your service moving forward in the coming year. Do you have any changes? Do you have anything that you would like to add, subtract, modify with respect to schedules, ridership growth, et cetera, et cetera? We sat down with this group and went over those assumptions in earnest. One item that I am a little concerned about and will be addressing with Amtrak moving forward is there is a base assumption for us in the coming year of a 6% ridership growth. Frankly, that is unprecedented growth, and growth in the last 5 years does not support an assumption of 6% in the coming year, particularly given that I firmly believe we will take a small ridership hit with respect to the ongoing work that needs to be done in San Diego to ultimately improve the corridor, but we will take a little hit there due to run times and other things. I will be working with Amtrak in the coming week to modify that assumption. I would see it in order more of a 2.5% to 3% ridership growth assumption. I would also remind the board, with these assumptions comes obviously the responsibility of the service, and we are required to meet a set of uniform performance standards. And I want to be both conservative and realistic in the assumptions that go into the cost estimate for the service in the coming year, particularly given what I just spoke about in San Diego, and given that this is our first year out of the gate managing this contract. We are scheduled to have a draft agreement for you to at least review, or the high-level provisions of those, as part of our August meeting, and the agreement itself in September. I am trying very hard to work with the state and Amtrak to have more of a draft agreement for you in the August timeframe, so that we have an opportunity to vet this twice and to look at it twice. I will outline for you in great detail, as I said, though, all of the provisions of the agreement in the August timeframe. I'll also be talking about that with the executive committee at our August 6th executive committee meeting. The San Joaquins are in a very similar spot with respect to negotiating their agreement. I believe that we have a draft framework or a template of the agreement that both captures what the Capital Corridor has done over the past many years, as well as the roles and responsibilities that were outlined in the ITA. As you can imagine, the agreement that is in place right now needed to be significantly modified to separate the roles and responsibilities, those retained by the state and those assumed by the Rail Corridor Agency, and that has taken some time to work through those, but I anticipate, based on an email I received this morning, that I should have that draft this afternoon. That concludes my update on the agreement. Happy to answer any questions about where we are.
Anyone on the phone have any questions? No? Anyone else? You know, I have a question. It's somewhat related to this agreement, maybe more related to the last item, but it covers both. And that's on the station capital program, or the small capital program for stations. And I know we've just recently done the 3-day tour, and there was some discussion of looking at potentially doing a call for projects with the various agencies and people who are responsible for the stations. And then I believe I read that perhaps we're not planning that this year, and for 15-16, and that maybe that's pushed out. Can you? And I know Amtrak plays a role in that, and part of their role is that in the operating agreement they have a project manager that oversees those projects as well. But can you maybe just give us an update on sort of what the game plan is for the $500,000 station improvement plan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members, Michael Litchie, Deputy Director. So as Jennifer mentioned before, and you alluded to, Mr. Chairman, we did do the 3-day tour with Amtrak engineering staff, as well as staff from Caltrain's Division of Rail. The purpose of that was really to look at the progress of projects, minor capital projects that had been programmed in previous years, as well as to then update the kind of needs list for future year projects. And as you pointed out, historically the minor capital projects have been included as part of the Amtrak operating agreement. So over the next week, Lossan staff is going to circle back with Amtrak to kind of get that updated list of projects and try and narrow down which projects are the priorities for the next budget year. We will not have time because of the tight time frame that we're under here to get a call for projects together. I think that's still the ultimate goal. I will say that I think on this tour, it was the first time that we had invited local agencies to participate in the station assessments, and we had very good participation from all counties and TAC members. So that was very helpful to get that local input and kind of start getting more local involvement in the stations. A lot of the stations have very complex agreements, some of them which we still don't have from Amtrak regarding who's responsible for what portion of the station. So it'll take a bit of time to vet through that. But I think, the ultimate goal is still, as we've stated before, I think in the business plan, to look at a call for projects to help leverage local dollars. And we are doing some of that work, that type of work informally now. I'll point to a project that we worked on in Orange County, the San Clemente Pier platform, which is used by both Metrolink and Amtrak. Amtrak had identified it as a minor capital project. OCTA was able to secure some safety and security grant funds and ultimately ended up making the improvement so that Caltrans didn't and could use their minor capital funds for other things. So those sorts of partnerships are what we're going to be looking to continue with local agencies. But yeah, for this year, we're going to kind of continue with the process as it's been, just because of the tight time frame, and then look for the next year to develop a little bit more robust program involving local agencies.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for that update, and we look forward to a lot more information. Obviously, this is one of the very big and important pieces on our plate for the next couple months here as we look to adopt a new operating agreement with Amtrak. And that moves us on to the ridership update.
Mr. Chairman, Michael Litchi again. I'm going to give just a brief introduction before I turn it over to Megan Lemaster, who will be providing the presentation. So as you know, and I know we have a few new members on the board, but we do provide a quarterly corridor trends update to the board that looks at ridership revenue, on-time performance for all the passenger rail services in the Lossan corridor, including the Surfliner, as well as Metrolink and Coaster. And we will be continuing to do that and making that report even more robust to capture the additional uniform performance standards that the state has approved. But the intent of today's presentation is really to kind of give you a flavor of some of the other information that over the past several months and working with Division of Rail and Amtrak, Lossan's been able to get access to that really delves a little deeper into ridership and station pair usage than we typically provide you in the corridor trends report. And this type of information is really what we're going to be looking to, not only to continue to monitor the performance of the service, both on a holistic scale as well as individual train scale, but also will provide us with a lot of valuable information to help with marketing programs if we see that there are certain trains that have capacity and maybe are good candidates to implement a specific marketing program to fill those trains. There are several programs like that now. There's a Kids and Trains program, which Amtrak has on the Surfliner as well as a few other corridors to kind of fill empty seats on midday trains and also provide a good educational experience for school kids traveling throughout the corridor. So those types of programs, I think there's room for additional development. But obviously we're going to try and avoid the trains that are already overcrowded consistently. So so really the data that we're presenting today is just to give you a sense of what we'll be looking at and how we'll be using that data to as we move forward to try and increase the productivity of all the trains in the service and look for opportunities to fill empty seats where they exist. So with that, I'll turn it over to Megan, who will walk you through the presentation, and we'll have time for questions.
Good afternoon, Chair Golonsky, members of the board. As Michael said, I'm Megan Lemaster with OCTA and Lossan staff, and I'm here to provide you an update on the Pacific Surfliner ridership. Starting off with slide 2 shows total ridership by month for the past 2 years, starting in May 2015, through May 2015. The highest ridership in the last 2 years was in August 2014, exceeding 280,000 per month, perhaps due to the last summer's Del Mar season. Average monthly ridership for the last 2 years is about 230,000. Slide 3 shows ridership and revenue trends for the past 2 years. As you can see, they follow virtually the same pattern with the peak in the summertime and especially last year. Average monthly revenue is about 5.5 million or 139 million total for the last 2 years. And as I mentioned, average monthly ridership, we're looking at about 230,000. Slide 4 has a table that shows the top 5 ridership trains. The data in this slide reflects the federal fiscal year to date, so it's October 2014 through April 2015. The station pair with the highest ridership is Los Angeles to San Diego, and these trains leave their origin, the top 5 are leaving their origin station in the early morning or the mid to late afternoon. As you probably know, each average train set can hold up to 500 seated passengers. The ridership numbers we get are for the entire route, so a single route may turn over several times. It may have several different seats. If someone rides from San Diego to Irvine, Irvine to LA, LA to Santa Barbara, or Santa Barbara to San Luis Obispo. So, like I said, it may look like the train is over capacity at certain points. If you look at train 784, the number 1 train, it says that it carries 650 passengers, but that might be, different station pairs completing a whole route. So in the future, we'd like to get peak load point data so we can see if the train is over capacity at any one point in the run. This slide shows bottom 5 ridership by train, mostly morning departures out of Los Angeles or San Luis Obispo and Los Angeles and San Luis Obispo, the late evening from San Diego to LA. Staff may attempt to target these trains in the future to increase capacity through marketing, discounts, promotions, that sort of thing. Michael mentioned that. We're looking at some of the lower capacity trains to see where we can fill some seats. This map is a nice visual representation, slide 6, of passenger travel volumes between Santa Barbara and San Diego. San Luis Obispo is not on the map for scale purposes, and also it didn't place as one of the top station pairs, just so you know, we didn't leave out San Luis Obispo. The thickest purple line represents ridership volumes of more than 100,000, and you'll see that between LA and San Diego and LA and Solana Beach. The thinnest turquoise lines represent volumes less than 60,000. And the highest station pairs are, I just mentioned that, LA to San Diego and LA to Solana Beach. So those top, the monthly average, or the monthly total ridership, LA to San Diego is almost 260,000, and LA to Solana Beach is about 123,000. So there's still kind of a big gap between those two. This slide shows top station pairs for the federal fiscal year 2014, so a full fiscal year last year. It gives you a visual, kind of to the left we have ticket revenue and to the right we have ridership. Fullerton to San Diego and Fullerton to LA were the only pairs that fell out of the top 10 when comparing the rank of revenue versus ridership. So again, you'll see, again, number 1 is Los Angeles to San Diego. Slide 8 lists average monthly boardings for 3 months, January, February, and March of 2015. The stations are shown alphabetically by station name, and the left column includes the number of trains that serve each station. So it kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at as far as boardings and alightings at each station. Los Angeles and San Diego, again, top 2, they rank first and second in boardings respectively. And Longpoke has the least boardings with an average of 593 per month. But they also only, if you look to the left, they only have 4 trains a day. And then there's that information shown here graphically in a map on slide 9. It shows average monthly station ridership or station boardings for that same period, the federal fiscal year 14. The dark blue, bigger circles, you'll see Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, Fullerton, Anaheim, Irvine, Oceanside, Solana Beach, and San Diego have some pretty high boardings. And under 1,000 a month, we're looking at Lompoc again, San Clemente Pier, and Carlsbad Poinsettia. Average monthly passenger miles for the federal fiscal year to date is shown in slide 10. The trains are numbered by 500 series, which operates between Los Angeles and San Diego, and that's on the left of the chart. And on the right are the 700 series trains, which operate north of Los Angeles. This measure will be used to demonstrate ongoing growth on state-funded services in proportion to population growth in counties served. So this is one of the measures that we're working on with the state as part of the state-supported rail. This slide shows average ridership by day of week. And as you can see, as one would expect, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are the highest ridership days, which is typical of this type of service. And especially Friday really sticks out with over 9,000 a day. Wanted to put some weekend ridership in here too. Slide 12 shows the top 5 trains on the weekend. And it looks like we're looking at, they're mostly San Diego to Goleta and San Diego to San Luis Obispo. So you note that all of the 700 series trains, which operate north of LA, these are all on this list. And I think it's just mainly, the whole train set, everyone's going from San Diego all the way to San Luis Obispo or similar. Slide 13 shows average monthly ridership by class. So we're looking at business class and coach class for the Surfliner. Trains are split up again by the 500 and the 700 series, Los Angeles to San Diego only on the left, and north of Los Angeles with the 700 trains on the right. So longer distance trains, typically, if you look at the way that this chart is set up, have more business class riders. And that makes more sense because the longer you want to take the train, the more comfortable or more amenities you want to have. So that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Anyone on the phone have any questions of Megan?
No, good report.
Okay. Anyone here have any questions? I have a question, and it's really just in general. This is fascinating information here, and I know that you're working to put it into to change it from data to information as well, and that's a bit of a challenge. But one of the things that would be useful to me as you work through this, and if you can keep in the back of your mind, is for staff to be able to sort of synthesize all of this information and provide the board with at least staff's opinion on what are the 4 biggest opportunities for Lossan. And I know that's a bit of a tall order, and there's no magic to 4, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, but as you look at the various performance metrics that we look at with revenue, ridership, fare box recovery, on-time performance, all those things kind of have to be factored in, but it'd be useful to, as we're looking at setting our goals, as we're looking at our strategic planning, at least what staff believes or identifies as the biggest opportunities. So that may be, as we look at the data, identifying an area that's underserved, that has the you know, and some of the data that the state has on their modeling and their travel demand, and that may have to come into play in that. But somewhere it'd be great to just pull together all of that information and look at what is the track capacity, what is the available train capacity, what is the demand, what's the current, you know, may imply double tracking, may imply sidings, may imply station improvements, maybe it implicates simply marketing stuff, but somewhere synthesizing all of that would be really helpful to me, at least. Okay, all right. Any further questions or comments on the ridership update? No, seeing none, then we'll move on to the special event planning. Ms. Bergner?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I think you all know Jay Fountain already. He probably needs very little introduction. I asked Jay to provide this overview to the board to help everybody understand what goes into special planning for an event or any kind of additional demand that we would anticipate seeing on the system. We talk a lot about it amongst ourselves, and we talk a lot about it with board members, but I think we use a lot of nomenclature and things maybe that don't translate, and we lose sight of that because it's part of our day-to-day existence. So I asked Jay to provide an overview of what goes into planning for an event like Del Mar or Comic-Con or something of that nature, and what is a block and what does that mean. And I'm very happy with the product that we have here. So I'd like to turn it over to him and have him walk you through the effort that goes into that type of planning and providing service.
Thank you, Mr. Fountain. Thank you for coming down and preparing this presentation for us.
Thank you, Chairman Golonsky and Vice Chairman Krantz and the rest of the directors and guests. Amtrak really appreciates the opportunity not only to make this presentation, to be part of this exciting time of Lossan. As you can see by our initial slide there, you know, I love this picture because it shows the past, the old Santa Fe train there, and here you have the new. And sometimes the more we change, the more we stay the same. This is a perfect segue after Megan's presentation about the Surfliner. Obviously, we have our strategic goals, which always are safety first, customer service, and on-time performance, and that's been our goal for some time. Interestingly, as you looked at some of the slides that were put together in the last presentation, it kind of defines some of our challenges that we have, particularly for summertime, where we have is, in the earlier presentation, our peak ridership. The Pacific Surfliner is Amtrak's second busiest and fastest growing corridor. The Surfliner trains operate over a 350-mile route from San Diego to Los Angeles and San Luis Obispo. Summertime always brings ridership increases, and events like Comic-Con San Diego and Del Mar race season only add to the challenges of an unreserved service. Comic-Con, for those of you that may not know, I put this in here, is the largest convention in California and the second largest in the United States every year. There were more than 130,000 attendees this year for the event that ran from July 8th, Wednesday through, that was a preview night, through Sunday to July 12th, 2015. The summer race season for Del Mar opened Thursday, July 16th, and runs through Labor Day, September 7th. And then they have a second season, which runs October 29th this year through November 29th. The average consist for a Pacific Surfliner is 6 cars. Business class, cafe, 4 coach cars. The 4 coach cars include a cab car, which allows for a push-pull operation. This allows for just under 500 passengers per train. The Surfliner has 9 sets of equipment running daily. 4 originate out of Los Angeles, 3 out of San Diego, 1 each out of Goleta and San Luis Obispo. This includes the 1 classic set, as I like to call it, our Horizon or low-level set, which, by the way, we just switched out. We sent our Amfleet cars in a swap with Chicago We sent them to Chicago and inherited the Horizon fleet, which gives us a standard look on that low-level set, and it also increased our much needed, those Horizon cars have a larger capacity in their restrooms, so that helped out. Next slide, please. The challenge every day, I have a person on my staff, Lorena, who her and I work weekly. We look at this projection. I know it's a little harder for you to see, but this shows the 9 sets of equipment as you read them across. So you can see at the top 763 originating in San Diego, and it goes all the way through Los Angeles. It shows in the first 2 blocks to Goleta. The reason we separate the blocks is because of trying to get a little more detailed about the ridership projection. You can see, if my eyes are correct, it looks like in that first box on the top, we're projecting 521 people in the blue box for 763, where if you look at LA to Goleta, it projects 145, I believe it is. And this gives us a little bit of an idea what we need staffing-wise. It helps the OBS crew out for provisioning the train and everything. Now you can see some of the boxes. If you see those red boxes projected on 785, 768 down the line there a little bit. 768, come on down a little bit, right there. The LA to San Diego, you'll notice that one is a red box. That means that we have a really high projection of ridership. And this is, of course, a projection for opening day of Del Mar. And these numbers, to be fair, I believe we inserted a slide in this that showed actual ridership on opening day for Del Mar, so you could see some real numbers. Normally when we look at these, the one I have in my pocket is what we call a true projection. These were amended for the board so that you could see some actual riders on opening day. It's pretty incredible. You see down at the bottom, by the way, if you're curious about what the notes are, it just tells our staff what we need to do to, for adding blocks, where the block's going to go. There's obviously a couple of private cars you can see down below. There's a locomotive, extra block is in that second one. So it's a pretty detailed thing. I don't expect you to grab everything at once, but it is helpful to kind of see this is what our staff, and this is available not just to all our onboard staff, OBS and T&E, but it's also available to our mechanical people as they put the trains together. It helps let them know where we're going to need what. The Del Mar block. When I've been in this job a little over 3 years, came here in February 12, and one of the first things I had to look at is I wanted to see what we could do for the summertime to better position ourselves for dealing with our summer rush. While I affectionately referred to the Horizon set as a classic set, it's pretty much a challenge for our crews to work that low-level set of equipment. We have some OTP in ADA issues trying to get folks up onto that equipment. Prior to my arriving, we ran 2 of those sets. I was able to work with mechanical and reduce that to 1. And then I said, well, we got to figure out a way to deal with our July volume for Del Mar race season and Comic-Con. And so I was walking through the yards looking at the equipment one day, and I saw this old cross-country cafe sitting there. It's a double-decker car. And I said, what's that doing? And they said, well, we use it as a spare when we need an extra cafe car on our long-haul trains. I said, really? So I went up and I viewed the car. To be honest with you, this car was a result of a not-so-successful experiment that our long-distance folks had come up with to modify our dining cars so we'd have like a half diner, half lounge. And it didn't work that well, so they ended up not modifying, fortunately, all of our diners. And there's a few of them in the system that simply were only being used as spares. So it has an upper bar service area, and you can see that's a little coach area. It has like the seating is like booth seating on one side, and this is for our coach seating. And then on the flip side, it has 10 tables. I think if you go to the next slide, it has 10 tables. Now, if you can flip back to the PowerPoint on the back a couple of slides for me. What we did is this car has basically 60 seats available in it. And we approached corporate Amtrak and Caltrans about running the cross-country cafe with an extra business class car and 1 to 2 coaches to increase our seating capacity and to offer improved food and beverage service on our highest value trains. We had to go through that first year, we had to jump through quite a few hoops, and to be honest and fair to our state partners from Caltrans, who obviously they wanted to see the numbers, what, you know, if we pay for this, is it going to work? But being quite honest, probably the bigger hurdle was getting through. Sometimes at Amtrak, we're a large corporation, and getting new initiatives through is a little simpler than just saying, let's try it. But we were persistent. We put together a business plan that we thought would work, and it was quite successful. I mean, very successful for both Amtrak and at that time, Caltrans. Our passengers, quite honestly, loved it. What it does, and we can go forward to maybe a couple of slides here. This particular slide right there, what's interesting about it is you're looking at the doorway there. That is the entry into our second business class. Now, in order to do this, we're going to, we have to coordinate interdepartmentally with all the departments on where we're going to add this block, because you can't just magically insert it into a train set. So what we do is we put this block together in the yards. It has a locomotive, a business class, then this cross-country cafe, and 1 to 2 coaches. And we position it, the locomotive, against the bumper in Los Angeles. And when train 768 comes in, and I think we can go to the next slide now, we just tag right into it. The cab car tags right into the block. Mechanicals there, operations people there, they do all the tests, they add the block. So a train that arrived from Goleta as a 6-car set magically in Los Angeles becomes a 10-car set, for opening day. And we increase our seating capacity on that train substantially. We are able to increase it from 500 to approximately 800 people, and then we double our business class capacity. When that train set arrives in San Diego, we get it in San Diego, and now if you were standing at the Santa Fe Depot, the block would be positioned on the north end of the train. So our staff jumps on it, disconnects it, and moves it off of the cab car, the lead on the Surfliner, and sets it off on another track. And it stays there for the afternoon while the races are going on. Meanwhile, train 579 continues back to Los Angeles as a 6-car set. Now later in the day, when train 580 arrives in San Diego, we have a crew sitting on the train, the outbound crew. They're already in position. They move the block and add it back on top. So then we increase the capacity for the folks going home that afternoon. We have to work with marketing to review where the most demand is. That's a part that one of our staff members, Lorena Dappa, plays a huge role in. There's the interdepartmental coordination between, the conference calls we have to have, the meetings with mechanical, maintenance, marketing, our OBS staff, because we have to position extra employees. We have to coordinate that with our crew management center back east, because we need extra conductors. You can't just have 2 people or 3 people working a 10-car set. We have an extra business class car, so we need another attendant there. Obviously, extra provisioning for this cross-country cafe and an extra attendant. These calls start a couple of months out, where we start getting ready for it, figuring out what cars we're going to use, for the coaches and what we'll need, and where our peak seats are. Like, we're already looking ahead now. Sometimes it's just a case of watching the news. I was reading an article yesterday. I'm watching it very carefully to see if American Pharoah is going to come out next month and run in the Pacific Classic. Because if it does, I can tell you as surely as I'm standing here, the capacity, they'll set an all-time track record at Del Mar that day. So we're going to need to be prepared for it if that, and according to his trainer, Bob Baffert, they're considering bringing him out next month. So those are the types of things we look at, and where do we add a block. After the race season's over, we utilize this same set, by the way, for our San Diego Charger games, because since there's currently no team in Los Angeles, we have a lot of folks that come down out of LA and out of Orange County to watch either the Chargers or their favorite team, the Patriots or the Jets or whoever that's playing from the East Coast. So we use the block for that as well. You can see they're, go ahead, they're off to the races here. This is a live shot, not a live shot, but an actual shot of the block unloading at Solana Beach. You can see many of the ladies, of course, wearing their hats and everything, quite famous when they go down to the racetrack, particularly on open day, to wear their hats. That block on the rear of the train has become a fan favorite for a couple of reasons. The tables that I showed you on the one end, we reserve those for business class. So now we can actually oversell our business because so many folks like to go in there. We have an additional 40 seats next to that business class. And a lot of the business class riders, rather than riding in their business car, go sit at the tables. And then they've got a business class access line only to go to the snack bar. So the attendant working that snack bar, which is upstairs, a great design, he has a coach line, and then he's got a business class line over here. So he works back and forth, giving a little priority so our business class folks don't have to wait in a line of 60 people. Let's see, it was used during Comic-Con. It runs every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during the race season. The Del Mar block is added on Fridays to 774 in LA and runs to San Diego, and it comes back on train 595. The reason the later time on Fridays is because the post time is later on Fridays and they have concerts after the races. On the weekends, it runs 768. We add the block in LA and it returns on 591. The extra business class and the cross-country cafe continue to be fan favorites. So where do we go from here? Another beautiful shot of our train. Well, quite frankly, the arrival of new equipment is a long-term solution to resolving our capacity issues. Meanwhile, we're going to be looking at opportunities to add service. Short-term, we may need to look at all reserved. We've been very successful with our all reserved service during our Thanksgiving holiday week. And 2 summers ago, we used it for Comic-Con and the Del Mar race season to much success. This could help manage our ridership and reduce standing room only conditions that can be a safety concern. And, I think earlier Ms. Bergener talked about looking at opportunities. Amtrak is committed to work with the Lossan agency and the JPA to identify solutions to really a great problem, the growing popularity of the Pacific Surfliner exceeding our capacity. To that point, those of you that may see this on Twitter or may get the pages or whatever, the last couple of weekends we've had that 10-car train set running out there on 768 with 800 seats available. We've averaged approximately 400 standees on that train. You sort that out, that's about 50 to 60 a car. That's how popular we've become. I mean, the folks really want to come out and ride this, and I think we've got a lot of opportunities here. Obviously, new equipment isn't going to fall out of the sky, even though I wish we could get Bruce to get it here a little quicker. I know he'd like it here as much as we would. But I think we do have some opportunities, like we're going to look at this Thanksgiving to, use some captive equipment to do some different things. This last snapshot I'd like to point out was taken by a then conductor who's now been promoted to engineer, Jared Forcier, who took this beautiful shot of the train, the Surfliner, in Santa Fe Depot in San Diego after a rainstorm, of which we're expecting to get a lot of this winter. And this was on the cover of one of our Amtrak calendars. So Thank you very much for your patience, and any questions, be happy to answer them.
Director Carvajal?
Thank you, Chairman Galonsky. You know, I just wanted to thank Amtrak and Jennifer Bergner and all the rail providers along the corridor who stepped up to work together to support the World Games for the Special Olympics. I think it was a huge success, and in great part with everybody that participated in making it seamless for our travelers to step up and play a role. But I also wanted to thank you, Jay, for adding another car for our Open Streets event coming up on September 12th.
Absolutely.
We're going to have a great event here in Santa Barbara. I happen to have coordinated a health fair with the city of Santa Barbara, the county, the schools, and many nonprofits, with American Indian Health Services taking the lead for a lot of our low-income, vulnerable populations in our area. And just really want to thank you for stepping up and coordinating that extra car to come to people who want to come to our area to celebrate our Open Streets event. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Carvajal.
Okay, Director Strong?
Yes. I had a question, actually, on the all reserved. Are you thinking of that for all these special events, or are you thinking all reserved across the board?
Well, I would respectfully defer to the JPA and Lossan. I think probably this is, would be an area they would be looking at. I don't know that there's one size fits all. Jennifer?
No, Director Strong, I would say that this is something that has come up in a number of discussions, both with respect to on an ongoing and regular basis and with respect to special events. That would be something that we would consider. We would talk to our partners at the San Joaquin who have an all-reserve system in place now. We would talk to our partners at the Capitol Corridor who don't. We would work through with the state as well on any modeling or exercises that they've done in the past with respect to going to an all-reserve system, and ultimately it would be a decision that would come to the board for approval and something that we would include in our business plan. If that was the direction that we were going to go or something that we wanted to look at, there would be an opportunity perhaps to do that on a pilot program or not, or again only on special event trains. So there's no immediate plan to change the nature of the service at this point.
Okay, and I'll express my one concern, because one of my considerations, if I take my family on a trip, is us being together, especially on long trips. So I'm wondering how Amtrak handles groups. Do they give them a block of seats?
That's a great question, Director Strong. Absolutely. When on the projections, it will show us ahead of time and show the crew that morning. One of our biggest sources of groups, as you will find out, is interestingly all the school kids. The school kids make a lot of trips up to from San Diego to San Juan Capistrano to go to the Mission. That's a very, very popular group point, or from Los Angeles to San Juan Capistrano for the groups. And we block out a cab car. I was instrumental. They used to be open booking, and I worked with our reservations and marketing department several years ago to block out. Now, because we'd already reached capacity on 700 series trains, I shifted the groups to the 500 series trains because it just didn't make sense to displace our regular folks on 700 series, and that's worked out quite nicely. But yeah, for the larger groups, they may get a whole car. The smaller groups, we'll block out sections of a car or whatever. I think that, again, there's some opportunities there for the JPA and Lossan to look at in our group business. And, we certainly have had some utilization of the Del Mar cross-country car for groups. And I think that's an opportunity that the JPA and Lossan have to look at increased utilization of that for businesses or whatever. So.
Okay, anyone on the phone have any questions or comments? Can I ask a question on the reserved and the all reserved? San Joaquin has reserve service now.
Correct.
And if I remember correctly, aren't they anxious to move away from that?
Mr. Chairman, yes. They have expressed some concerns over the all-reserve nature of their service, and they are looking at opportunities for changing that. I don't know, I can't speak specifically if any progress has been made on that front, but for a variety of reasons, they don't feel that it fits the demographic of their rider.
Okay, and I know one of the things that you lose when you move to that is the flexibility that exists today.
Well, I mean, from someone that's been associated, I've been on the Surfliner now for 15 years, been riding it since the early 80s when it was the San Diegans. What I can say is that it's a different demographic, I think. I don't think it would be comparing apples to compare the San Joaquin to the Surfliner. I think, what probably the driver and the challenge will be for you and the JPA will be to figure out ways, because of this capacity, to maybe funnel that. There's maybe an opportunity there to funnel some of our ridership to the 500 series trains. And I think that's why it at least merits a look, so.
And certainly you guys know better. You're on the front lines every day. But I guess one of the things that I would encourage you to look at too, is we look at that as, maybe some hybrids. Some hybrid versions. So you can go from
Right.
unreserved to completely reserved, and maybe there's some middle ground there that makes sense, that, a larger portion is reserved than we have today, or something like that, or we
Correct.
move to something that still offers that flexibility for the sort of, we'll call it more casual user that likes to appear at the train station and get on the train and go where they're going.
Well, and in fairness, and I'm sure it's one of the things that will be looked at, we do sort of have a hybrid in the sense that we have all reserved on the business class. So the business class on all of our trains is reserved, and there might be some opportunities there as well, so.
Well, and there's a certain ratio of business to
Correct.
coach, and I guess one of the things that I was scratching my head around was, maybe that ratio is something that we need to look at, or maybe we have two levels of coach, reserved coach and unreserved coach, or some such
Oh,
thing.
good
And
point.
I'd just say let's keep our minds open and look at that, because there's benefits to both of those approaches. The reserved
Absolutely.
is a benefit because you get more certainty, but you lose some flexibility.
To your point, I would use as an example, we're having immediate success on the Coast Starlight, one of Amtrak's intercity trains. We've gotten off to a great start in the first month of a pilot project where we have business class seating in the coach now, modeled to some degree after the Surfliner, I might add. So creating, to your point, two classes of service in coaches. So.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Director Kranz, Vice Chair Kranz?
Yeah, it seems like this is an excellent marketing opportunity. Is that your intent, to try and sell this service to perhaps businesses and other events as it goes?
Vice Chairman Krantz, there is an opportunity now for businesses to do that. Amtrak offers group rates and discounts and promotions, as Jay alluded to and talked a little bit specifically about. So certainly that would be something that we would look to capitalize on if we're seeing a large demand for groups going down to the races or to Comic-Con or something like that, certainly.
I'd also like to comment, Vice Chairman Krantz, and thank NCTD as they've done the last couple of years. Your staff has worked with us under the terms of the rail-to-rail agreement that was discussed earlier. It's important to point out that those two big weekends, we did have a blackout of rail-to-rail down on NCTD. So that helped us, manage our full fare ridership. So thanks to you and your staff. Okay.
Anyone else? No? Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Fountain.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so that moves us to the Managing Director's report. Ms. Berkner?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I've covered a number of the items I had planned to provide updates on throughout the regular agenda. I would like to remind the members that we do have an executive committee meeting scheduled for August 6th. We'll have a number of discussion items on that agenda. The agenda will be posted early Monday, I believe. Again, I updated on the staffing plan to date, the Amtrak agreement to date, Santa Barbara peak period. One last thing that I had on my list of items to update the board on is that the state has been very, very diligent about establishing and setting up the first statewide partners working group. And you'll recall that this was specified in the ITA that we would come together on a regular basis to discuss items that affect not just the individual corridors, but the state systems as a whole. We have that first meeting scheduled for August 13th, and both Michael and myself will be traveling to Sacramento to meet with members of the Caltrans staff, and we will provide an update out of that meeting once we conclude. That concludes my overview.
Okay.
or update.
Any board members have anything to report? Anyone on the phone? No. Director Carbajal?
Just want to encourage you all to go have fun and spend a lot of money in our community. I know the mayor welcomed you to the city of Santa Barbara, but being that I'm the representative from SBCAG, I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that we have a wonderful county with many wonderful cities, and you're only an hour away from wine country, the Guadalupe Dunes, Santa Maria Tri-Tip, and of course, you can stay here in Santa Barbara and enjoy the area.
Thank you. Thank you for your hospitality. And I just had a quick update. I was privileged to represent you in Sacramento. Ms. Bergner and I went up for the signing ceremony of the ITA, and we joined members of the San Joaquin JPA. It was a little anticlimactic because you're just signing ceremony was over pretty quickly, and it represented a pretty big chunk of effort by an awful lot of people. And I want to say thank you to everyone that was involved in making it happen. And that really goes back years and years to the people who initiated that idea. But I was very proud to usher in the next step, and it's an exciting step, and I have to remind myself frequently that there's a lot of work that has to be done to do transitions in that, because it's I get impatient occasionally because it felt like we spent an awful lot of time talking about governance and then transition, and I'd like to talk about increasing ridership and improving the service and doing the marketing and taking advantage of all those opportunities. And I know that everyone is thinking about them, and we will get there. So if I seem impatient occasionally, that's okay. I do understand that there's a lot of nuts and bolts that have to be taken care of to make sure that we not only do it, but
Mr. Chair, I have
we do
one
it
quick
right.
comment or question.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank everybody for the involvement with the Special Olympics. We had some involvement here in Tustin, and it's just a really, really special event here in the state of California. And then the last thing, real quick, Mr. Chair, I know that Washington, there may be, Congress has just recessed for the August. I'm just wondering if either Lance or Jennifer could just give us a quick update on what's going on in Washington, since I was there not too long ago.
Okay. Mr. Larson?
Certainly, and for the record, I believe Director Murray was on a deep sea fishing trip for the last 4 or 5 days, so he's probably out of the loop. So I'd be happy to provide a little update. Wednesday, as you know, the MAP 21, the Transportation Authorization Bill, has been extended a couple of times. The last deadline is July 31st, and one thing that Congress is very, very good at is getting stuff done before they go on a recess. On Wednesday, the House of Representatives passed a short-term extension until October 29th to come up with a longer-term bill when they get back in September. Senate had already a plan for their bill. It was a 6-year authorization with 3 years of funding. They passed it through their side. And last night, reluctantly, since the House went on recess, reluctantly voted to support the House extension until October 29th. When they come back in September, they'll be able to take the Senate bill and whatever House bill comes out, which we have not seen yet, and possibly conference that for hopefully a long-term 6-year transportation authorization bill, which includes highways, rail, and transit.
None of us are holding our breath.
You said it.
Ms. Bergner?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lance.
Members, I think to the chairman's point a few moments ago, much credit should be given to the chairman. There is one, prior to us executing the ITA, there was one other agency in the state who had successfully done this, and that was the Capitol Corridor. And as the chairman said, we signed the ITA jointly with the San Joaquin folks signing theirs at the same time. And one of the facts that I'd like to remind their managing director of is that our chairman signed faster, so we were the second, and they were the last ones done because they signed more slowly. So I think it's important to note that we are the second such agency to assume responsibility for a state-funded service. If there are no other director's reports, Mr. Chairman, I did want to note that lunch is being provided by SB CAG, and Scott asked me to announce that it is in the boardroom just outside of the meeting chambers here.
Okay. All right. And with that, we will stand adjourned until our next meeting, which is Monday, August 17th in LA. Thank you.